So we've already addressed the reality that Greek is an inflected language. As an inflected language, you're going to expect changes in the nouns. And that's going to affect how we do the different things we're going to do with the language. All right, so let's begin to dive into our first couple cases. But before we give you the endings for those cases, we want to set up some things that deal with language or noun cases as a whole. So number one, in Greek, we're going to eventually learn in this class 5 cases. Now, so those of you who take a second year of Greek, so that you don't call me a liar and a loser for lying to you, understand you're going to learn additional cases. But here's what you don't have to learn when you learn those new cases. You don't have to learn new endings to the cases. You're going to learn all of them in these 5. We're going to introduce the first 2 of these cases in this lesson. And so when you come to do it, every one of them is, every noun can be inflected in these different cases. You're also going to have for every noun, not adjectives and not the article, those are different, but for nouns, every noun will have a specific gender. So whenever you see in your vocabulary list a word that ends in the vocabulary list with the ending as, lagos, okay? Whenever you see as, you know that is almost always a masculine verb, or noun, excuse me, a masculine noun. Okay? If you see one that ends in an alpha or an eta, like hora, well, if you see that one, then that is almost always feminine. So masculine, feminine. And if you see a noun that ends in omicron, nu, then you know that one is always a neuter. Okay. Those are our 3 genders in Greek. Masculine, feminine, neuter. Now, the tendency is one to always associate natural gender with the noun. In Greek, that's really not the corollary. There's really not necessarily a connection between the gender of the object or the thing that's being addressed by the noun or being represented by the noun and the gender assigned to it. This is grammatical gender. That's different than natural gender. Sometimes we'll see that, sometimes it's reflected, but you can't count on that. So just know some words are masculine, some words are feminine, and some words are neuter. And that's just the way it works. And a noun will only have one gender. One and only one gender. All right. This is just kind of a standard rule. When you look at a word in your vocabulary list, as would probably be masculine, a or a ending would be feminine, on would probably be neuter. Now, what's happening in front of that word, in front of these endings, will tell you what the stem of the word is. Okay? So, the stem is where the meaning of the word is. In your lists, it'll have an asterisk by it. In the vocabulary list, the stem will have an asterisk. Now, you're going to know them really by hearing them, by their word, by their ending of the whole word, like lagos, hora. That's generally the way you're going to know them, is as the fully inflected reality. And that's going to tell us something important. Now, number, so for each case, for each noun, you'll have different case endings for the different cases, but then each case is represented as either a singular or a plural. So for example, if in English the word were teacher, and you're using it as the subject of the sentence, it would have a certain ending in Greek. But you could also say teachers, plural. And it could still be the subject of the sentence. So it'd still be that case, the subjective case. But in English, we'd put an S on it. In Greek, we change the ending on it. Similar to putting an S on it. All right, so every noun is going to have its case. It's going to have its gender. It's going to have a number in any particular usage of that word. So it could be a plural in one setting. It could be a singular in another. And then it's going to be a part of a declension. And a declension is a categorization or a category of how the word is inflected. So think about that. A declension tells me the pattern of how that word or words in that declension are typically inflected for the nouns. All right. So in Greek, we're going to deal with 3 declensions. So first declension, these are words that end with an alpha or an eta, and these will be considered first declension and are usually feminine. Usually. Second declension end in as or on in their nominative, and I'm going to talk about nominative in a minute, nominative case. They end in as or on, and these are generally masculine or neuter. Right. Now, we have a third declension. So third declension are when the stems end in a consonant. So stems that end in a consonant, those are considered third declension, and they can actually be any gender. Okay? So we're not going to deal with third declension until chapter 10. So don't worry about those yet. We're going to focus on the majority of the Greek words, which are first or second declension. So now let's talk about our first 2 cases. The first case that we want to address, and this one in the chart, and I'm going to show you how to draw this chart. This chart is eventually going to expand to be 4 cases. We won't put the 5th one generally in this. So you usually do it this way. So you do masculine, feminine, neuter, and you're going to do nominative. And for our case today, we're going to learn accusative. And we're going to do these as singulars. And then we're going to do another set of nominative and accusative. And we're going to make these our plurals. Okay. All right, so you have this chart. All right. So you've got, in this chart, you've got nominative masculine, nominative feminine, nominative neuter. You have accusative masculine, accusative feminine, accusative neuter. Then you have the plurals of all of those as well. All right. So, nominative case is going to be used when it is the subject of the sentence and when it is the predicate nominative. What is a predicate nominative? It is when you're using what we would call in English a linking verb, or often a to be verb, or what we might call an intransitive verb. And that means it's a verb that does not take a direct object. So in those cases, if it's, I am he, That would be a subject. He is a predicate nominative. So it is used in the nominative case, even though it's not the subject of the sentence. All right, we're going to talk more about predicate nominatives, but just know nominatives are used as the subject or a predicate nominative. An accusative is the direct object of the sentence. So when you see the ending of an accusative noun, you immediately know, regardless of where it flows in the word order of the sentence, you know it's the direct object of the sentence. Okay? All right. So now, remember, all nouns are only either masculine, feminine, or neuter. So when you are learning vocabulary, or when you want to look up a word in a lexicon, which is a Greek dictionary written in English, okay? When you want to go to a lexicon or you're reading vocabulary words, you will always be given the nominative singular of the word. That's how you look it up. Because all of these endings are going to change every one of these words, how it's used. So you may find a word and it's inflected in the text and you're wanting to look it up. Well, which form do you look up in the lexicon? Because that word could have a lot of different endings. So, if you want to look up a word to know its meaning, you will always look up the nominative singular of that word. In our case, if we're talking about nouns, if it's a masculine noun, it's the nominative case is the lexical form is the nominative masculine singular form. If it's a feminine noun, we look up the nominative feminine singular of that noun. If it's a neuter, we look up the nominative neuter singular of that word. That's called the lexical form. So when we begin to parse nouns, which are, we list out all of the parts that make up that noun, you're going to need to know the lexical form for that. So you're going to have to recognize what case it is, what gender it is, what number it is, and what the lexical form of it is. Okay, so that's where we're going to go. Nominatives are the subject or predicate nominatives. Accusatives are the direct objects, regardless of where they find themselves in the order of the sentence. So the next thing we're going to learn in the next video is we're going to actually learn what these different endings are of these nouns. Okay, so we'll talk about how to learn those and how to recognize them in the next video.